Hello, peoples. It's time. We're back again. Tonight's episode is going to be on the Sabbat, and we actually have quite a few folks here tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into it. So y'all break out your war ghouls. Let's do some Valdery. All right? So coming back to us again tonight after his last show, which was 2 weeks ago, Brother Jason, say hey, man.
Hi there.
Of course, and we have three new folks tonight. We've got, hold on, I'm going to get my names right or I'm going to screw this up. Matthew, say hi, man.
Hi, I'm Matthew Webb.
And, of course, Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin Whiteside.
And Robert.
What up, guys? My name's Robert. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you. And, of course, my wonderful, wonderful co-host, Brother Jacob.
Praise Gain.
That's right, you people.
Praise be to the Doc Farther.
Maybe I should have.
Listen, I'm the only person standing on the other side of this line tonight, people. We can't.
You're out. No, the pack's gonna tear you apart, Peter.
I know, right?
It's not even worth an apple
It's
rising.
a bad place to be when it's about in town.
Does anyone know the ritual of the bitter rose?
No, that sounds like Tremere horribleness to me.
Okay, so just to get us kicked in tonight, we're doing any and all things Sabbat, and since we really love having this conversation flow organically, we're gonna throw it over to my brother Jacob. Knock us out of the park, dude.
Well, we do have quite the crowd, which is really different than Jason being our lone guest at our Satellite show 4 weeks ago. Since actually 2 weeks ago we missed because of health reasons. Peter and I couldn't do an episode 2 weeks ago, so it's been a little while since we've had Jason. Anyway, but what I want to throw out, so Matthew and his cohorts here are part of Jackalope LARP. And they have a really huge Sabbat event coming up this year. So I'm going to throw it to you, Matthew, if you want to kind of kick the ball rolling and tell us a little bit. I've seen some of your posts about what era of Sabbat that you've kind of picked and how you guys kind of went through the process. So kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on what you guys are doing.
So our company's called Jackalope Live Action Studios. We're based here out of Austin, Texas. And we are actually running the first officially licensed, supported by White Wolf, Sabbat-based Nordic LARP, or immersive style LARP.
Nordic LARP, love me some of that.
Yeah, here in not just here in the States, but anywhere. And we're going to be running what we're calling the classic, like late 90s monstrous Sabbat, where we're actually going to create like what they're calling the blockbuster experience. The blockbuster experience style LARPs are ones where you spend more than you normally would on tickets, but we're going to have like full haunted house style special effects and costumes. We've rented out an entire like rave site out in the middle of the country, and we're going to do a full From Dusk Till Dawn style shovel party turned blood temple with, blood sprays and blood fountains and, actual like horrible Schlachta creatures and fully make-upped up
Cool.
like Zamisi. And we're going to be running that November 17th, this fall, November 17th, 2018. And you can find out more about it at jackalope-larp.com. So that's what we're doing. And we're actually focusing on the classic era Sabbat, which would have been the second edition sort of Sabbat, where the Sabbat are first really defined as being a sect.
Oh, okay. So I don't want to. I'd say pre-Clan War, but not.
Well, pre-Gehenna and pre-Red Star.
That word because it never happened.
can.
The less we talk about that, the better.
Right.
But yeah, wow. Where are you holding this again?
Austin, Texas.
Austin?
Right outside of Austin, Texas. The tickets start at $180, but it's like a full kind of haunted house, sort of 6-hour immersive experience where you get to play a normal mortal, and then the monsters come out to play. You get hunted down. You get embraced. We're going to do the creation rites, the full kind of simulated burials, all that sort of stuff. And you're going to play out like 6 hours of being in the worst place imaginable for a mortal to be in the world of darkness.
Wow, that is, and you're saying you're going with the Nordic LARP concept along.
We're going, it's calling we're calling it the bespoke style because Nordic LARP means so many things. So what we're going with is that we're going for high immersion. What you see is what you get. Very light mechanics, consent-based mechanics. So nothing really happens to you that you don't want to happen to you.
So some crazy ass anti-tribute Malkavian is not going to throw a dementation at you with unless you want them to.
Right, you have to consent to everything that happens to you.
Okay.
But the point is to have fun, to embody it, to experience it, and there's just no fun. And we're going to workshop a whole bunch. We're going to do like 6 hours of workshopping before the game, the afternoon before the game. So people that understand that the point is to do the most interesting, cool, like immersive stuff rather than trying to win, because there is no winning.
There is no winning.
It's going to be one night, and at the end of the night, people are going, if you die in a blaze of glory. If you
make it one more night. That's all there is to this.
Right. And it shouldn't even be the goal to make it one more night. The goal should be to have an awesome, great, horrific time, because you're probably never going to experience the world of darkness again this way.
Oh, I would hope that this wouldn't be your last.
Oh, it's not going to be our last White Wolf event.
Okay.
This is going to be unique, and it's never, even if we run it again, it's never going to play the same way.
Oh, yeah, of course it never does. LARPs are awesome that way, even more so than tabletop. Just saying.
Oh yeah, with so many people involved.
Because you don't know this about me, but I have never tabletop vampire. I started out LARPing.
I started out LARPing as well. I think most people did. Robert, I think you started out LARPing Vampire, didn't you? Or was that Kevin?
No, we actually both did, but I actually dragged Robert into his very first game. I was making a bid for practice and needed an Assamite on my side. So I was like, hey, Robert, we were roommates in college. And I was like, hey, come with me. You can play this awesome Assamite.
You're going with me tonight, and you're going to have fun. You don't have a choice.
Let's be super clear here. What Kevin did was say, hey, Robert, do you want to come play this awesome kick-ass character? And then killed me.
Awesome! Got you killed on your first night out. That's even greater.
Got me killed on my first night out, and immediately I went up to Kevin and said, look, one, we were never building a character for me again, and two, I love this game. How do I get more?
And now we know all that we need to know about Robert and Kevin's damage.
That's very awesome. True. That's very true.
Oh
I hate you. How do I get more?
Now, I am only familiar with Camarilla LARP games. What's the difference in your mind? What's the difference between a Cam LARP and a Sabbat LARP?
Well, I mean, they have fundamentally different cultures, and it really depends on what era and what type of Sabbat you're playing. I mean, the Sabbat can be just as political and multifaceted as the Camarilla, but they tend to be more
in the face about it.
Yeah. Robert's actually a political science major. Kevin currently runs a Sabbat LARP. So, what do you think? What do you think is the difference?
So
for this one of you guys.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't know if you want to go first or if you want me to go first.
I do have a thing. The bigger problem with the question is that when you're asking what is blank about the Sabbat, you have to answer which Sabbat first, because it's easily the most updated and changed setting in the entirety of White Wolf. And I could go on and on about like the modern Sabbat's difference between the Camarilla and what we're doing with Nick, the knight in question, and the Camarilla. But keeping in the realm of Nick, I think the biggest thing about the Sabbat is that they are honest. They have no desire to hide what they are, and actually kind of look down on people who do want to pretend to be human, to not be this monster. And I think that's probably the first fundamental base difference between the Camarilla and the Sabbat.
Okay.
So I kind of want to add on to that just a little bit. So my own perceptions of what I think makes the Sabbat slightly different from the Camarilla. For me, the biggest thing is it comes down to purpose. It comes down to a goal that the Sabbat have. And me and Matt, me and Kevin all kind of have, this is the benefit of the Sabbat, is that you ask 3 different people, you ask 100 different people, you get 100 different responses as to what the Sabbat is and what it's about. For me, it's about their purpose, the fact that they have a driving goal. Whereas for the Camarilla, no offense, but it's mostly just run, hide, and stay away from all the scary things that are out there, and also try and manipulate as many things as possible.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you, dude.
Yeah, whereas with the Sabbat, it's very much we need to go out there, we need to destroy the antediluvians, the things.
The clock is ticking on Gehenna right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gehenna's a myth.
So you say.
Yeah,
Well, they know for a fact one day the elders will rise, and they need to fucking put an end to that shit.
Yes,
Exactly.
but it doesn't seem to work out that way, though. Even if you Diablerize the head guy, you're still going to have the next guy down to deal with.
We have time.
Yeah.
That's true. We got all the time in the world, yo.
Yeah, whilst the elders are bound to rise from their graves at some point, no one knows exactly when.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, some people
all the more
do.
interesting.
Some people are talking to White Wolf about the future of the Sabbat, so some people do.
Well,
Which
when
can no
they
doubt get
put out
revised at
the
some
Tel
point.
Mahirah
Again.
book last year, I knew the Sabbat had a future.
They do. I mean, White Wolf, the Sabbat are not. Well, one of the things that they've announced about V5 Sabbat is that in the initial book, they're not in there. They've gone to the east to fight in what's either being called the Grave Wars or the Gehenna Wars.
You're talking about the Clan Wars, yeah.
Yeah, no, the Gehenna Wars.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're talking about going the other direction. My bad. You're talking about going towards the Kwaijin.
Well, no, the Kwaijin are gone, I think.
Really?
More, yeah. They've very, very strongly indicated that they aren't interested in having them involved in V5. And yeah, the initial book, it looks like they're basically saying, well, the Sabbat are in the Middle East fighting the Assamites, so Camarilla and Anarchs have the rest of the world.
They're fighting everything. This is like
Yeah.
This is an Armageddon
To be
situation.
Yeah, and to be fair, Kindred of the East is a lot better as a standalone game anyway, so it's like that's probably the best move on White Wolf's part.
I think they're generally moving away from the idea that each of these ethnic regions have their own special thing. And
I don't know. Not when they went to the effort of trying to find African writers for the what was it, Ebony Kingdom? That's coming.
Yeah,
out.
but they're not saying they're special races of supernaturals. I mean,
okay. I get
they're
your point. Yeah,
vampires. They aren't not vampires. That's individual.
Got your point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now that you mention that, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's still
I think it's
kindred.
cool of them.
Okay, so Robert hasn't gotten in on this so far. How you feeling about this, man?
I'm really excited about Nick. To be 100% honest, I am a big fan of the Sabbat game, the Sabbat venue. I am a self self-appointed Sabbat hype guy. Sabbat is 110% my favorite venue. I have a lot of thoughts about Sabbat, and so I'm very, very excited for what Matt and Kevin are putting together for Nick, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to not only explore aspects of the Sabbat that a lot of people don't get to see, but to also expand the venue itself. Because most people, I feel, and maybe your listeners know this, maybe they don't, but most people, I feel, look at the Sabbat very squarely as only the bad guys, and that's all they are, and that's all they do. And while I can absolutely understand, like I 110% understand that that's how they are sold, and that's how they're kind of given off, I have a very strong ideal that they aren't just the bad guys. They're an opposite side of the Camarilla coin. There's a lot of similarities to them. There's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of things to them that makes them, to me, truly unique, truly amazing, fun set to play. And also, again, as a political science major and as a philosophy person, there's a lot of questions and things that you can do within the Sabbat that you just, I feel, can't get in most other sets, in the Anarchs or in the Camarilla or whatever. Each set kind of has its own different thing.
Well, I totally agree with you there, Robert, because I've been involved in a lot of conversations online where people are just like, oh, well, the Sabbat is, just a bunch of mindless murdering machines, and paths of enlightenment, or the path of whatever I wanted my character to do anyway. And I'm like, well,
what?
No, actually, that's very, very much not what any of that is about. I'm like, like there's paths that it's actually harder to murder with than humanity.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I've seen way more people pull stupid shit on humanity than they have on paths.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about politics, like with the Sabbat, the whole idea that, so in the Camarilla, you've got your prince, and you might have your coterie, and you've got your city, and that's about it. And in the Sabbat, well, you've got your pack loyalties, you've got your sect loyalty, you've got your subsect loyalty, you've got your path loyalty, you've got vinculum for people that aren't even in your pack that you might have to act against someday. There's all these different layers of choices that you're stuck with that you really can't get out of a Camarilla or Anarch game. Like, it's just, to me, it's a much richer role-playing arena.
The questions are a lot different, actually. But Kevin, you go ahead. I'm sorry, I've talked too much.
I don't know. I was just saying that actually pulls me towards what I consider to be the core values of the Sabbat, which are loyalty and freedom, and how the two of those.
I was just about to say exactly those two words, Kevin. Please continue.
Loyalty and freedom, and how they're often in juxtaposition to each other, because you're free to do whatever you want, but you got to be loyal to your sect. You got to be loyal for the Zamisi and the Sombra to your clan or lineage to some extent, to your faction. All those things that you were talking about, Alec, and you don't see that kind of challenge in any of the other games, because it's really only Sabbat who pushes this. You are free to do what you want, but then everyone knows that you're not.
Also, there's the conflict with like having to create a new morality in order to come to terms with what you are is in many ways a more interesting philosophical question than dealing with humanity, which everyone is on. So to say that, the paths are just, I'm going to have murder for dinner, that seriously misunderstands all of the paths. The paths, right. To understand why they work, you have to look at them and realize they are far more strict than humanity ever is. I mean, if you're playing Path of Cain, yes, you can diablerize anyone. Whoop-de-doo. How many times do you have to do that? But you can never treat a mortal as an equal. Never. Right?
That's why you guys have so many fewer ghouls.
Yeah.
And what treated like crap. Ghoul by nature is never treated equal.
Yeah. I
Is
actually
that
had
what the
a
Tremere do? You treat your ghouls as equals?
No, that's true too, but it just the whole thing about them being food and a tool kind of, there are some clans that will treat their ghouls almost as equals in the camp.
But if you're like Path of Cain, to keep on this example, you literally can treat them as nothing but cattle and tools. You can't treat them as a subordinate. You can't treat them as anything other than you are a complete object to me. And if you look at like Path of Honorable Accord, good God, has there ever been a time in which you have to watch what you say? Because anything that you promise, you have to do.
Everything you say can and will be used against you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually had an experience. Well, actually, it was more of a conversation with a player once. They took this stuff really seriously, and they were trying to wrap their head around the Path of Lilith because, they wanted to be a heretic. So the way that they explained to me how they got into the mindset of playing one of the Lilin is that they started at the fundamentals, like the hierarchy of sins, because you typically, unless you're very lucky, you have to start on the first dot and then just work your way up. So what they did is that they tried to picture a mindset or picture scenarios where the first dot, the last dot before you fall to the beast, what sin that constitutes and how best to avoid it and how to get it into his head that, avoiding pain is something that you fundamentally, shouldn't do, because pain is a natural part of existence. It's how we grow, it's how we evolve ourselves. And then he just went on from there, and that's going into that kind of mindset is it's not an easy thing. It's not just something you can just like snap your fingers and boom, suddenly you have this this alien mind. That is something in which a lot of people, I think, don't really put into consideration when it comes to actually portraying the path of enlightenment properly. It's an alien mindset that is completely devoid of anything resembling humanity.
And I think that's sad, because that is one of the most powerful things to do in role-playing, is to embody a truly different mentality.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing a unifier, someone on the path of power and the inner voice, I started reading things like Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, Julius Evola's Revolt Against the Modern World, and other books like that. Things which urge you to, books which kind of put you into this mindset of like, okay, what can I do to attain power? Just things that you can do to, because another thing about the Unifier path is they emphasize self-development. I mean, they acknowledge that, everyone has like a baseline of strengths and weaknesses. But the idea is that you're trying to conceal those weaknesses and exaggerate the strength that you have, be it physical prowess, combat prowess, your ability to craft the most, impeccable lie, or the fact that you know a lot more than anyone else in your peer group.
I know Robert's a big fan of Power in the Inner Voice.
I am a big fan of Power in the Inner Voice. I love a lot of the path. I mean, we've already talked about Cain. We talked about Power in the Inner Voice. Lilith, we hit on for a little bit, which is, by the way, a fantastic path to play in the Sabbat.
Heresy.
Even though it is heresy.
It adds so much flavor to the game because there is a lot of question about it being heresy. Just like playing Path of Night, which, by the way, I love La Sombra, so let's just get that out there real quick.
Right. I love Path of Night. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Path of Night.
Robert doesn't love La Sombra. Robert is La Sombra.
I breathe darkness.
I was going to get to that in a minute, guys, about the clan you specifically identify with, whether it be any tribute or the big two,
Yeah.
So how you feeling? Okay, we already know Robert.
Yeah.
So, Matthew?
I'm going to let Kevin field this one first.
So I waffle back and forth, but ultimately I kind of have to revolve around the Nosferatu. Because even as an anti-tribute, the Nosferatu don't like abandon their connections.
No, they still have access to ShrekNet, so duh.
War is above ground only. The jihad is above ground only.
Exactly. And I'm kind of a computer whiz by trade as to begin with, and I feel like once I make my connections, I tend to hold on to them. Like, even if we're on opposite sides of an ideology, I would still prefer to be able to call upon you if I need to, and know that I can do the same thing.
What's the phrase about the Nos? You screw with one of us, you screw with all of us?
Yes. Anytime I'm playing any character that is well known with the lore, I'll be like, don't insult the Nos. Even if you think they're not there, they'll find out, and then they'll hold it over you forever.
And trust me, next time you need to know something, they'll make sure you don't.
Precisely.
Exactly.
All right, I'm a fan of the true and worthy rulers of the Sabbat. You know, no. Ventruantes.
Get out.
Oh, you're just sad because we know what nobility really looks like. Shadow puppet.
No, I'm just sad because it's really going to hurt when I pull that spoon out of that place.
It's a scepter. You know why? You know what the difference? You know why the Lasombra symbol is a crown and the Ventru symbol is a scepter?
Please
a scepter is used to do something with. A crown just sits there.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And let's be honest, anybody can get a scepter, whereas a crown, you have to sit on the one screw head.
Yeah, but what? Scepter deals bashing damage, yeah.
Have you ever wielded a crown?
Depends on how heavy, man. The crown jewels for England, man. I wouldn't want to get hit with that thing.
Exactly.
Well, the other clan I like is the Toreador because I'm a big fan of the twisted artist and like
Does this clan ever actually do anything?
The Toreador are the clan of civilization, and they lend the Sabbat the sense of class they truly need. Now, if you don't mind, I think A positive is very in this year.
I don't believe the Toreador exists. They're really just like Setites and Bali all banded together and created a clan so that they could infiltrate.
That's a good point.
I have been at games in which I was the only actual Toreador in the Toreador clan, so I cannot debate this point.
The first time.
They made me Primogen. That's because I could actually answer the question, am I a Toreador?
Primogen is just as easy to stake as anybody else, just saying.
I literally was in a meeting, and I looked around and said, am I the only Toreador here? God.
One of my favorite stories is the story of Kevin brought it up. The story of I think it was some Bruja or something talking to another member of the kindred and saying, "Have you ever met a real Toreador? I think the Toreador clan is just a Mokavian prank."
It's a piece of writing from one of the Anarch books. I think one of the revised Anarch books. It's actually my favorite piece of fiction in all of the White Wolf writing stuff.
Really?
It's super funny.
Oddly enough, just since you went there, Dark Kingdoms, the Wraith book they did, best. I mean, I'm don't get me wrong, I love the Clan Wars novels, but Dark Kingdoms was what really made me fall in love with Wraith.
Wraith has a special place in my heart. It is one of two games that I want to run so badly and never will, because you have to have the exact right group.
Don't get me started on Wraith.
No, we've been talking about Wraith since year one for the show, and I'll be honest, everybody says it. It's like, I really want to play Wraith, but you got to have the right people. And I'm like, yes, I know.
It is one of 3 books, 3 role-playing games I know, which I absolutely love, but I know are almost completely unplayable because they're beautiful to read, and they're so beautifully put together. And then you look at it just like, you could never run this for more than like a game without it falling apart. And I love Wraith to death, but for the most part, it ends up just being the second Giovanni clan book.
So
wait a minute. What are the other two, Matt? Come on, dude.
Well, no, there's
what are
the
the
actual
other
clan
two?
book Giovanni. There's the actual clan book Giovanni, and then there's Ray at the Ascension. So that's your Giovanni kit.
Yeah, but you said there are
Ray
only
pieces.
3 that you know you just can't play.
Oh,
One was Wraith. What was the other
I
2?
can hear the chat just exploding with salty Wraith players right now.
Okay, well, if you want the other 2, you will not. I will be impressed if you have heard of them. All right, you ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Continuum, the time travel role-playing game,
It's been
and
mentioned?
Conspiracy X.
Okay, that one, no. Not so much.
I've heard
Continuum,
of them, but I know nothing about them.
Well,
Listen,
I'm an old fogey.
listen, I started playing D&D in the 70s. Okay? So, yeah, I had played on more than one RPG over the years. Pen and
What
paper
did you
were
have
all
to
we
carve
had.
dice out of back then, Grandpa?
Dinosaur bones.
For instance, Traveler was always fun. As far as that was our first shot at a sci-fi RPG. And then you had then we went on to GURPS after that, and then you could do anything. They've even written vampire books for GURPS, for God's sakes.
No, they didn't. Those don't exist. Go away. Bad.
That's like talking about that one movie that Kevin doesn't think exists.
That
I will
sounds an
say-
awful lot like heresy, which means I need to take out my Inquisitor hat now. Which is funny, really, because the clan that I was I feel the most affiliation with is the Toreador Anti-Tribute, and they do make the best Inquisitors.
There's no reason we can't be civilized.
Just the law is nobody mentions Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand. We can
Yes,
all.
as long as no
Excuse
one
me, I
mentions
didn't hear that. What did you say?
Yes, as long as no one mentions that particular book, which will not be mentioned, there will not be any. I will not have to bring out the heretic brand.
I ended somebody
fuck that
who
book.
who claimed to be a member of the Black Hand.
Well,
During
Black Hand
my
is
time
fine.
as an Archon, I did. I got to end somebody who at least claimed it. Now, there was no proof either way, but yeah.
If someone's telling you they're part of the Black Hand,
Then they're not.
Yeah, it's like if someone says that they're part of the SAS, if they tell you that, it's most likely not.
Or
Just-
Green Beret, or any
yes,
of the above,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. It's only when they deny being part of those special groups that you have to take notice. It's kind of like,
That's why I had to end him. It was, I couldn't take the chance.
Well, there is a special word for someone who claims to be Black Hand. Bait.
Oh. Who ate?
yeah,
Yes.
baked.
Good for
So
you.
I know how to make both Kevin and Robert shudder like hyenas in The Lion King.
Oh God!
Soul Eater.
No!
Get out!
Get out!
Say it again. Mufasa.
No! I'm literally shaking in my chair. It causes pain.
Enoch Shadowlands.
Get out!
The tombs of the antediluvians.
All right.
Peter, I need you to know.
I've had my fun.
Peter,
I've had
can
my
you
fun.
mute that guy?
I can't do that, dude.
Peter, you called them earlier tonight. I want your listeners to know that I have been at my house the whole time. My alibi is that I was here all night long. After most certainly.
Wait, there's a knocking at the door. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no. Don't open the door, dude.
Nobody excites the Sabbat Inquisition.
No, we always
Oh, my
expect
God.
that because
Okay,
an
so
Inquisitor cannot walk into the room and not within 10 minutes announce they're Inquisitor.
Yes, because no one
Okay.
expects that.
now for the folks, now this was the question I've been waiting till now to ask. Since we're only, like a half an hour into the show here, and we've still got an hour and a half to go. So how often do you run cam NPCs in your LARP?
Well, in our LARP, it's kind of it's a one shot. So I can't answer whether or not there will be
No,
any
because that would be spoilers. I get that. I'm talking about previous history, not what's coming up.
In games I've ran and played in before, there have often it's set in the Sabbat held city, which is a lot less put people on spikes murder porn than Sabbat sieges, when the Sabbat intentionally break the masquerade and go all out and go completely gonzo in order to weaken the Camaria's hold on a city. In a Sabbat held city, things are actually a lot more staid. So we usually maybe had some Camarilla contenders. We much more often ran up against anarchs, because anarchs are always looking for a new foothold. And
in
they
Austin,
think that,
yeah, you guys are kind of halfway between the Cam's held cities and the Anarch Free State.
Well, yeah, and the biggest game I ever played in was actually in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, years ago. But I know usually most of the stuff was interpack conflict, dealing with infernalists, because the infernalists were kind of a nascent threat within the Sabbat constantly. But I know in the current Mind's Eye Society game, which Kevin runs, there's kind of a ban on the Cam Anarch NPCs, sorta, kinda. I'll let him explain.
So the Mind's Eye Society games take place in a shared universe. Both the Camarilla
Jason
Anarch
Carl's
games...
been on the show.
Who?
Jason Carl.
Cool guy. Really, really nice to meet. I had wine with him once. It was fun. There's a shared universe between Cam Anarch and Sabbat and the Mind's Eye Society, and so the Camarilla are other players, and there's kind of this watching from on high to ensure that the players aren't just going to wipe out the sect and completely destroy the balance of the game. And so we don't so much have Cam Anarch NPCs as we do have Cam Anarch PCs from either nearby venues or whole other cities who are interacting in kind of the same world.
Oh, okay.
Well, and to try to facilitate that as well, didn't the canon storyline, there's kind of in wake of the Red Star and the Hunter Uprising and everything, the two sects have kind of got a tenuous ceasefire going on to try to discourage.
That's the MES specific plot line, but yes.
Yeah. It's an MES specific plot line, but this is what I really like. So they basically after the Red Star, the Sabbat and the Cam came together and were like, hey, so hunters are a problem. And basically the hierarchies of both sects were like, let's call a truce, 7-year truce. Let's sign a blood contract. Let's put it in ink. So that way we both know that we are not allowed to attack each other openly. There's no open assaults. There's no there will be no infiltration, and wink wink. There will be no attacking of one another, wink wink. We will not go to war with one another, and that is like Matt and Kevin said. That's the MES version of it. But that to me, it's a really fun thing to explore in this particular.
So, but how do you? I guess. Hold on.
I think Peter's dying. I apologize, Peter.
No, I'm okay.
Stop saying tentacle strangling him, Robert.
It's not my fault. They do things on their own.
No, okay.
I'm sorry.
So
that tail has a mind of its own.
Will it not be at some point to where all the LARP groups are going to diverge so far that it's going to be fun just no matter where you go play, really? Because you won't be aware of what's going on because there's nothing really covered in the lore.
Well, I mean, LARPs always kind of rewrite the lore in order to fit the area they're in. Like the MES style and the style of often a lot of troop games to run in their local hometown. If you look at the old battle map of the United States, you shouldn't be able to run a cam game in New York City. But if I'm in New York City and I want to run a Camarilla game, I'm going to run it. So every single game is going to rewrite themselves a little bit.
Well, it was only not a Cam City up until it became a Cam City again at the end of the Clan War.
Right, exactly. But you get my point. That you're always going to be rewriting history. Philadelphia is still technically Sabbat, but there's a big Philly game, Cam Monarch Philly game. So, I mean, part of the struggle, part of the reason why the MES and puts up this treaty and so forth is they have to deal with the fact that since everybody's a PC, the Sabbat is supposed to be about 1/3 to 1/2 the size of the Camarilla in numbers.
Which would make it, would also point out to the reasoning behind the cannon fodder issues that they had during the Cam War, where they would just snatch people off the streets just to turn them into foot soldiers.
Right, they would
because
do
they
that,
didn't
and
have
they've stopped doing that in the By Night Studios canon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Knights of Turmoil, which is a By Night Studios only plot line, says that they stopped doing that due to the sacking of Atlanta and the burning of Atlanta, where a bunch
we got mad about that, man. We really did.
It's controversial to say the least.
Well, no, they killed an Archon and a Prince in one fell swoop, which was crazy for the time. Jay Benison Hodges, the Malkavian Prince of Atlanta, and Julius, the Bruja Archon.
Oh, I'm talking about later than that.
Oh.
There's in the BNS timeline, the Bionex Studios timeline, there's an instance where the Sabbat that have taken over Atlanta are punched right in the throat. And they're not punched in the throat by the Cam, they're punched in the throat by the Anarchs, or not by the Anarchs and the Hunters.
Hunters, heavily implied to have been directed by the Anarchs.
Right.
Oh, okay. So at least the Anarchs are learning how to use tools too. That's kind of...
Well, if you look at V5, it doesn't really work out that well for them.
No, it never works out for the Anarchs.
It doesn't work out for anybody.
But no, I played in the LARP back at GothCon in 2000, which was the lead up to the attack on the High Gallery. The night that they lost the Malkavian Prince and an Archon in one fell swoop.
Right, so they further amended it in the By Night Studios timeline to be that the Sabbat are burned out by a bunch of Hunters for being so monstrous. And then the By Night Studios Sabbat, I actually wrote an entire article about this on the Night in Question design blog, is that the By Night Studios Sabbat are perhaps the largest divergence from the original Sabbat yet written. Because the original Sabbat, and I know Robert will argue with me, and Kevin has his
Hey, that's the point of the show, man. Yeah. Yes, just saying.
The Sabbat originally are, I think we both agree that they're defined by their dynamism as opposed to the kind of locked in glass sort of stability of the Camarilla. The Camarilla, like you said, is about hiding out, gaining power, and doing as little as possible. And
maintaining it at all costs.
Right. They're about keeping stability, while the Sabbat are based on dynamism, chaos, social Darwinism.
Yeah.
Constant.
That's the phrase
sharpening
I
and
hear
turning.
More about the Sabbat than any other group.
It's used in the books all the
social
time.
Darwinism.
Yeah, it's used in the books several points. Is the term social Darwinism. The guides to the Sabbat, yeah.
But there was also, it was the only time that we lost to Chantry that we didn't know what happened. I'm Tremere, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, just prior to the attack on the High Gallery, the Chantry at Atlanta burned. None of the kindred who were stationed there survived.
Well, that's what happens when your greatest enemy has Auspex.
Yeah, we have no idea what happened. It was one of the few times. Now, there were a couple of other places. The reason we were able to maintain New York, well, even after the Sabbat took it, was that we still had C5B. The Chantry of the Five Boroughs.
Right. I mean, the Chantry of the Five Boroughs has been around forever.
But no, it was the only thing that
helped.
maintained the camp foothold in New York during that war.
Right. Well, the thing is about what happened with the difference between the Sabbat and the second edition Sabbat, and they started changing around Guide to the Sabbat, Justin Achilles' Guide to the Sabbat, and they kind of just continued this evolution where I think the biggest difference between at least the original conception of the Sabbat and the early conceptions of the Sabbat versus the Camarilla is if you're talking about Gothic punk, the Camarilla is the Gothic. And the Sabbat are the punk.
And then some.
And they're highly dynamic. They're very clan-based. They are hard to control. They have hard time completing goals because they have this constant problem with unity versus freedom. And also they derive all their freedom from chaos. And they have this inherent issue. Now, when you start, but they also embrace their inhumanity in a huge way. By the time we roll around to the By Night Studios version, most Sabbat are on humanity. Most Sabbat are actively trying to interface with the mortal world, and the Sabbat are scared of hunters, which previously they actually made a point of saying the Sabbat are the least scared of hunters.
They did.
Because they just they are hard to fight. Hunters have a hard time fighting them.
Oh yeah.
And B, they would let hunters just take out a pack, and if the pack was weak enough for that to happen, you're good. They're like, okay, well, I guess they weren't strong enough, and the hunters pat themselves on the back for killing this
group of vampires. They
group
don't
of
really
vampires,
know whether they're
and the Sabbat come back around and 3 weeks later make 5 more.
Yeah.
And so, but they changed that so now they're the most threatened by hunters.
Huh.
And there's some people say the Sabbat never had a masquerade. Second edition book, they say that the Sabbat don't have a tradition of the masquerade, but they have their own version of it.
Yeah,
this gets on my tits more than anything else when it comes to Sabbat games. Like,
preach.
Like even before the formation of the Sabbat and the Camarilla, vampires as a whole had this, shall we say, tradition known as the Silence of the Blood. You can find this in Dark Ages supplements. It went by various names, but there's a reason why the wolf doesn't want the sheep to let them know where he is, especially if that sheep has access to flamethrowers or torches and what have you. It's just a policy. It's just basically a policy of non-disclosure. There's really nothing more complicated about it than that.
Yeah, and the Sabbat's version of the masquerade and the silence is just intimidation and like picking off the weak and the alone.
Yeah,
that's their version.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way that it was explained to me is that the Sabbat have only 2 methods for dealing with humans that see them feeding or otherwise seeing vampire-related stuff. You either dominate them into forgetting, or you kill them. You don't. If a police officer catches you feeding with his his dash cam or his body cam, you kill the guy. You smash that camera by whichever means necessary, and you escape.
But
nowadays most of those cameras upload to the cloud now, so even destroying the camera wouldn't stop it. Just saying.
Which is part of where I think, and I don't speak for By Night Studios, but I think this is where part of they were coming from. In the modern world, a lot of the old Sabbat ethos doesn't work. There's only so far you can go with the brazen "we don't care if people see us" before enough people with enough knowledge find out, and you get an Atlanta. And I think. And I know it's a controversial decision, and I'm trying to support one way or the other, but I don't think that the raise of Atlanta is an entirely impossible or out of the ordinary idea.
No. That was a really good strike, and I was like, oh well, yeah, you catch all of the major kindred of the city in one spot. Duh, knock them out.
No, we're not talking about that.
My bad.
attack on the Sabbat. We're not talking about the attack on the High Gallery. I think that there is a point, but I think they went too far in the direction of making them more like the Camarilla rather than figuring out how to take the Sabbat and modernize them. You had people who you had them rewritten to be more like the Cam, and I think hopefully they'll find a medium in between the two, where you can have the cool part of being a Sabbat, because why play Sabbat if they're just Cam with Lasamba?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's too harsh. I'm sorry.
No,
But
dude, that was
that's not fair to people. But I think that if you take too much of what makes them the Sabbat, the philosophy and the idea of actually playing with monsters, people who are brazenly monsters, you take too much of that out, I think a lot of the appeal of the Sabbat as a setting, as opposed to all the other ones, goes away.
I was going to agree with you there. Is that that was the whole point, and I've talked to quite a few Sabbat players over the years, and that's the thing, is your Cams are just monsters pretending not to be monsters. The Sabbat are always monsters, and they damn well know it.
So that's a very true point. However, as Matt said, we do kind of have disagreements on this particular piece. For me, I do enjoy that concept and that idea of the Sabbat being sort of a dark mirror of the Camarilla. And again, I know we've talked about BNS and sort of the benefits it's shown and the negatives it's brought about. But for me, the thing that I really enjoy is that this version of the Sabbat forces people to really have to try and look at them a little bit deeper and say, maybe they're not just the monsters. Maybe they are doing what they're doing for a purpose. Maybe they are being a lot more intelligent than people have previously thought them to be. One of my most annoying things that I hear from people is, well, the Sabbat just kill wantonly and do whatever they want, and that's the end of it.
Never been true in any of the supplements.
I've never assumed that.
Yes, but people have that perception. People have that idea. And to which I always have to say, okay, you know, where a lot of people are getting their information about the Sabbat acting like monsters and crazy, just going around killing things, is the propaganda within the clan books or within the books themselves that say, well, the Sabbat create these shovel heads and then they send them out and blah, blah, blah. What they don't say, which you have to have critical reading skills to understand, is that the real Sabbat are creating these shovel heads and sending them out in waves to attack the Camarilla or the Anarchs or whoever. Meanwhile, the real pack is holed up in a private location that is waiting for the prince or the baron to move so they can attack them, strike their target, and then get out. And it's a lot more tactical guerrilla warfare than I think a lot of people.
Let me hold on 1 second here. I have to agree with that, and it was one scene in the Clan Wars that brought that out. Was that for the longest time the Prince of Baltimore was a La Sombra, and they actually almost killed Jan Petersen or Hartstadt the Elder, whoever you want to call him by, and that was a well thought out strike. This was not just some random Pacductus deciding that he was going to hit these guys.
I think that people misunderstand the amount of care the Sabbat do in doing their rites. Yes, they have festivals of monstrosity. They go through a lot of trouble to make sure that they are not interrupted. They do a lot of stuff. And the idea that I think that mostly the burden is generations of storytellers not understanding what the Sabbat actually do with their time and not realizing that their big bloodbaths and blood feasts or stuff like that are their high holidays and their special events where they meticulously pick off a whole bunch of people, or they kidnap a bunch of illegal immigrants, or they do something of that nature in order to get a bunch of bodies, and then they do their stuff and they burn all the evidence. They don't just go around like stabbing police officers in the head for no reason. They did not maintain control of New York for 100 years by doing that.
No.
So I don't think it was. I think that we could have done, and the Guide to the Sabbat, the 98 Guide to the Sabbat, does a really good job of explaining this, but I don't think anyone read it. Or
it's really good because it's got a section where it talks about like the different ways that you can run a Sabbat chronicle, and like it's going through like it's like
Chronicles of Blood is one of the best chapters ever written in VTN.
Yeah, and it's like, and it covers off on how, you know, like you had mentioned, and most of the Sabbat games I've played in, you don't really deal with the Camarilla because you're just dealing with the night on night. We're Sabbat. This is our city. We have rituals. We have pacts. We have stuff. We got shit we got to do. Right?
And the Sabbat are their own worst enemy.
That is another thing which does annoy me sometimes in some of the Sabbat games I've played. A lot of like storytellers, a lot of players and some storytellers, more often players, they really forget that the Sabbat is a religious organization. First and foremost.
Bishops, pack priest.
I hear you,
Come on,
Jason.
yo.
I hear you.
Let him finish.
Well, to be fair, it's not. I wouldn't say it's like, you know, organized religion in that regard. It's probably more like, you know, it's more like the Branch Davidians than the Catholic Church. or alternatively, you could almost say that it's more like ISIS than whatever.
Okay.
In fact, I've always used that comparison. The Sabbat is essentially ISIS with fangs, you know.
Okay. I feel
now
it.
pretty explicitly. Now almost explicitly in V5.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that, and I think the thing that's on the Kevin, you can have this one.
So the religion aspect, I mean, there's always been this idolatry or idealization of Cain, even from beginnings, like early books. But the Church of Cain, such as it exists, is kind of a construct created around Revised when they were trying to make. When you start to see the Sabbat go towards more Cam, like especially in the LARP books, the Gray Book and the stuff after that, you start to see. I think they trying to make the Sabbat LARP more Cam LARP like, so that people will play it, and that's where the church aspect comes in, and then it just exploded from somewhere, and not a lot of the material really covers it as like a church until after Revised, and most of the stuff from before that, they're more like a secret society than a cult, you know, like Masons. They have these
like
rituals.
the Illuminati as opposed to the Catholic Church.
Exactly. Yes.
They bear the same resemblance. The belief in Cain has the same relationship to the Sabbat, and I think that Protestantism has to the Masons. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's a good way to go with it.
Or what the IRA has to Catholicism.
Yes.
I mean, I think an overemphasis. I think a lot of people see that they call their people bishops and archbishops and think, oh, they're like the Catholic Church, and they don't bother to turn around and read that. No, they did that in mockery of the Catholic Church because they're originally based on a medieval death cult.
When you do look at this Sabbat,
but you also have to remember some of the higher ups, the old school Sabbat NPCs like Cardinal Luis Moncada. He was straight up Catholic. Period.
Yeah, but
that's something I've seen, and that's something I've seen in a lot of the supplements. The Sabbat's ideology can be summed up, or at least the religious cult aspect of it can be summed up as one part Roman Catholicism, which they get from the La Sombra, one part pagan Coldonism, which they get from the Shemisi, and one part Cainite heresy, which they get from the Black Hand.
I disagree. I think
That's fair enough.
Yeah, no, I'm disagreeing with you in order to have an interesting conversation.
Nah, there you go. No. Oh, wait a minute. Hold
actually-
up. I just noticed what time we got here. We are at 1 hour. We've got 6 folks in the channel, and ain't nobody said shit. So if you've got questions for these guys, please put them in the chat. We'll be more than happy to get them answered for you. So, but I hope that everybody who's listening to us live right now is enjoying the conversation. Back to you guys.
So I think that one, Catholicism is something that they mock, but they're literally based on a medieval death cult. Mm-hmm. So they do have the Coldunist, the paganism, and kind of the Norse paganism sort of thing. But the most important thing to keep in mind about the Sabbat is, like, unlike the Cainite heresy, which was more about the mortals, actually, because the Sabbat do not want to be revered by humans.
No,
that's the biggest difference between the Cainite heresy in the Dark Ages and the Sabbat, is
which
that
is
they
a
do not
major
wish to be
change
served.
in the just thought I'd throw this in here. The old school Simishe wanted to be worshipped as gods back when they still ruled Carpathia, but since then that's changed apparently.
Right, and the Sabbat explicitly do not want to be worshipped by humans. They consider that to be more of a Camarilla thing. The thing about the Sabbat to keep in mind is they do not worship Cain as a god. They believe Cain personally founded their sect, especially in the second edition. They think that he came about, literally a embodiment of Cain showed up in some stories, and it founded the sect, or he directly sent dreams to do so.
A lot of folks don't realize about the Black Hand is their full title is the Black Hand of Cain.
Well, yeah, kind of. Except for that was kind of a retrofit because they were actually trying to. Well, the Talmei Hara were a cult in Asia Minor of mages. But they start calling themselves the Black Hand of Cain because people were like the Black Hand of Cain. Oh, okay. And for some reason we let that slide. But what I'm getting at is they're ancestor worshippers. They are not God worshippers. They are ancestor worshippers.
No, they know the antediluvians exist. They just don't want them around.
Well, no, they worship Cain, but they don't worship Cain as a god. They consider him to be an idol. They consider them to be the ideal. It's like if you want to understand how the Sabbat works, you're better off reading about Confucianism and Chinese religion, because you have these venerable ancestors which you consider to be the model for your life, and you try to learn as much about them and emulate them as much as possible. And that is the soul of the Sabbat, like original religion, had more to do with Cain is awesome. Cain was the best at being a vampire. So everything that you do, yes, we feel Cain through the rites because we are his chosen sect, but he also wants everything we do is about emulating him as much as possible. And that's why they follow, for the most part, Cain's dictates, except for the one against Diablerie, but they've weighed that off as
of course.
Robert was saying.
But if they want to emulate Cain, shouldn't they just pull a Cartman and go, screw you guys, I'm going home?
But in their cosmology, they didn't do that because Cain showed up to found their sect.
Yeah, but he decided he just didn't want to deal with these people anymore and buggered off. Wherever Cain buggered off to.
Well, according to their
that sounds like heresy.
Yeah. To the Sabbat, no, he didn't bugger off. He came and told us to be Sabbat. And so there's a difference between like what we may canonically know Cain actually did and what the Sabbat as a sect believe he did. And even then, there's still some wiggle room for whether or not any of this actually happened because White Wolf.
Yeah, because White Wolf,
That is something that I'd like to do in a chronicle one day, because that one thing which most people, well, I haven't really heard much discussion about this, but there is no like proper codified book of Nod. I mean, yeah, sure enough, you do get some people who do have like their own edited copies of it, or you might even be lucky enough to find someone who's seen a fragment or book of Nod. But as far as like a proper like archived like full edition version of the Book of Nod, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a good thing. It's like, okay, tell me what the real Bible is.
Yeah,
And
I was going to bring that up.
You have no way of telling all the apocryphal books from all the others.
So I think canonically, Beckett's copy is probably the most
accurate,
fully completed.
I still haven't gotten my copy yet, by the way, so don't.
So Beckett's Book of Nod is somewhat complete, but there's it still doesn't have any of the Arestes fragments in it,
or the Book of Lilith.
Yeah. Well, Revelation of the Dark Mother is technically not part of the Book of Nod.
No,
That's one of the things I like most about the White Wolf mythos, though, and it just most heavily reflected in the Sabbat, is that there's a lot of different ways things could be, and the storytellers are kind of armed with the power to tweak the world to their own vision, to tell what kind of story they want to tell.
In the old BGB, it says if you don't like the rules, make up your own.
Yep.
Or the lore, for that matter. I think that's also mentioned in that paragraph. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to make changes to, please knock yourself out. And we have something now that we didn't have back in the day, the Storyteller Vault, which is really blowing up, by the way. I'm super impressed to see how many people are starting to contribute to that. So that these guys are really making sure that this system doesn't die off, which I was concerned about for a while there, by the way.
Oh, it's not dying off. I mean, V5 is coming out at the end of this year. Mm-hmm. V5 is going to be a beautiful book, and it's really going to enwrap it. Like, it's going to reinvigorate and kind of sharpen up the setting a lot. They are cutting out a lot of the cruft and going back to what everyone kind of started out playing, and they're doing some really great changes to it. I'm really excited about it. Everything I've seen about it makes it look fantastic. I know the Sabbat aren't going to be central to the first book, but they're coming back soon.
Of course,
and they're not going to keep them out. They're too good.
Yeah,
but
they're kind of necessary to if you want to make your player base happy, you got to kind of give them what they want. And I got news: there are just as many Sabbat players out there as are Cam, and some are both.
In this case, though, I feel like White Wolf is trying to really get to just the core of Vampire before branching off into like the core of Cam Vampire, Anarch Vampire, Masquerade Vampire. Everything I've seen from the new V5 stuff is really about getting back to what does Vampire mean as a venue, and what made, I think Martin used the words, what makes this game dangerous, which is a really cool sentiment that he had that I really am looking forward to seeing where it comes from.
Cool.
I think that in the new setting, most people are anarchs. I think one of the things I heard speculated about it in Berlin was the fact that the real Ventru clan advantage going forward is going to be, the fact that you actually have a chance of being in the Camarilla straight out the bat. Most vampires are not.
No,
in the
you
camp.
Actually have to prove your worth to the prince before you're actually granted membership in the clan, in the group, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Which turns the Camarilla into this kind of elite secret society, and everyone else is anarch kind of by default, which I think is a really cool, kind of interesting way.
Yeah,
See, I like that angle, because I actually played in a Chronicle once where we did have the Camarilla and Sabbat as secret societies that coexisted instead of being these big mini countries spread around the world. And it really was an interesting play where most people were more or less anarch, and you had some elites were in the Cam, and some of the other more nefarious elites were members of the Sabbat, and they had this like secret Cold War thing going on within the city and in the court, and not just on a large international scale. And it really made for a very interesting, different feel to it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if that might be the direction they go. I don't know.
That's very close, though I don't think the Sabbat are going to be coexisting the same way. Because the Sabbat are not have left. They're gone. And everyone's kind of nervous about where they went, but they are not in North America right now. They got up and left.
Just
and they
picked
went
up and
east.
moved on.
Well, no, they went to go. They had that Armageddon moment where like all the armies of the earth got called into the Valley of Armageddon. They decided that that they are going to the dark places of the east. Also, the Camarilla implied is losing a whole bunch of its elders to the same conflict.
There's something called the Gehenna Wars, which isn't particularly well defined in the stuff that's been released so far. But what we can tell is that it's some kind of conflict out in the Middle East, and the Sabbat, they're all there to a man. Every last one of them is off fighting in that.
I bet you the Assamites are just tickled to shit to have y'all there.
I don't think the Assamites are gonna. I think the Assamites are definitely going to have an interesting time going forward because of how split the clan is right now, and how people are in their stomping grounds. But when all the Sabbat show up and decide that it's to treat your entire countryside like an all-you-can-eat buffet, you're having a very interesting time in that Chinese province sort of way.
They live in interesting times. Yeah.
So, Hakeem is going to make an appearance, apparently.
I thought Hakeem was dead.
No.
Yeah.
Don't talk about Hakeem. He's a demon.
Well, there's the old man on the mountain, but that's not Hakeem.
That's not Hakeem. Hakeem, you're talking about the old man on the mountain is Ulshulgi, yeah.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah.
Hakeem is the antediluvian
for the Assamites, yeah.
Yeah.
And he sleeps at the bottom of what is the name of the fortress? Alamut, yes.
Yeah. But I thought there was speculation that Olshugai, whatever his name is, Olshulgi. I only read the name. I've never heard it actually pronounced.
Yeah, if you're using the Arabic transmit, the way they pronounce those particular letters, that's the closest I can get.
Yeah. Olshugi. There was some implication that Olshugi ate Hakeem, but that's only implication.
Yeah, there's always that. You don't know it. The dude's dead until you find his tomb and it's empty.
There's also the suggestion that Shogi was a demon. There's a lot of after the Earthbound.
It's also
stuff
worm tainted. What's that got to do with the price of tea in China? But no, okay. New Wave just joined us. Good to see you, girl. Appreciate you making it here for at least the last half of the show. Apparently she doesn't have a question yet, so we're going to check back with her in a minute because I have a feeling she's going to want to ask you guys something. She's always good for questions.
I actually kind of wanted to hit on...
What? Hello?
Sorry, I apologize. I think I accidentally got muted or something. But I was saying I wanted to kind of go back to Matt's idea that he had been talking about the question of religion in the Sabbat. Because I kind of have, again, me and Matt, I love talking to Matt about this stuff, but we have kind of differing opinions, and I think that's what kind of makes us work really well.
Yeah.
For me, my belief of sort of the whole religion of the Sabbat. So Matt talks about the fact that the Sabbat make a mockery of Catholicism, and I do agree with that.
I can't argue that was stated in the book.
Yeah, no, I understand that. What I'm saying is, I think it's also a matter of there being some truth to it, because the La Sombra were a major part of the Catholicism. That's what made them split between that was the big difference between Ventrue and La Sombra. Ventrue went the way of nobility and things like that, and La Sombra went the way of religion and that way. And it allowed them to sort of have that different idea. So you've got that idea of Catholicism and religion in the game. And I don't think that you want to denigrate it. I don't think you want to talk badly necessarily about it, which I don't think Matt does. I don't think anyone here is doing so. But what I'm saying is it's something that you want to sort of approach, because one of my favorite stories in the Sabbat is the idea of the holy warrior, this archetype that you can play, where you believe very, very strongly in a concept or an idea about the group, because you believe you are morally right. You believe you are right on a whole different scale. And I think that is a very, very fun aspect of the sect that you can play that you can't play in a lot of any other sect. So I think it's important to note that religion, while it may not be as big as some people choose for it to be, I think it still is a major part of the game. And I think there is something to be said about the fact that the Sabbat, the Sabbat is very, very, very well known for their ability to transition, their ability to change, their ability to adapt.
There is a faction of the Sabbat that would agree with you, Robert, called the Orthodoxy. You're familiar with them. Mm-hmm. When we talk about how those aren't major parts of the game, or at least when Matt's talking about that, I think it just means from a canonical standpoint, the Orthodoxy were never a major group until the revised stuff came around.
They're not even revised. They only show up in BNS.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
V20.
Yeah.
And I give me a sec. I am pretty sure that they are in the revised guide.
The Ultra Cons are, but they weren't. They aren't in the original sec list. I know that much. I might be getting my timeline wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're not in there.
Also, as a quick note, because I'm monitoring the chat, all the stuff we're talking about for V5 is just conjecture based on what's been released. We have no real official information or anything. We're just kind of guessing and being
spitballing.
Yeah, but our opinions are our own. I do not speak for White Wolf or any of their subsidiaries other than myself. But,
I need to start putting that at the beginning of the show, because we've never assumed that we were. There's more speculation in this show than anything else, but it's always interesting. Regardless of how you're speculating, it's always fun.
I think I'm actually going to agree with Robert. Not in the fact that I don't think they're Catholics, but I do think that what makes a Sabbat, or one of the things that can make the Sabbat a Sabbat, is that they literally think they are in on a secret, a divine mystery that no one else is in on or is too obstinate, ignorant, or brainwashed to believe, which is they fully embrace their status as a vampire, and they know that Cain is the progenitor and has provided guidance to his childer to bring his justice upon the antediluvians. The Sabbat believe themselves fervently to be, when they call themselves the Sword of Cain, even though that only shows up in Revised, they believe strongly that they have been empowered through the Raitai and through the organization of Cain himself to be a vehicle of Cain's vengeance upon his childer for defying him.
That doesn't sound like any major religion I've ever heard of.
And they believe if they are willing and able to do so, they will sit at his right hand in the final city. And that all those who died for him will be blessed and remembered. So they do have that aspect to them. do they have like religious secret police and all this sort of stuff?
Yeah,
and
they're
are
called
they like
Templar.
medieval Catholics? No, I mean the Inquisition literally has no authority other than to go after demon worshippers.
Yeah,
That is the
but
only
the
authority
definition of demon worshipper is fairly vague.
Yeah, but do you know what happens when they get out of line for it? According to the books,
It's okay.
there's 20 of them. They get killed to a man.
Wow.
So
So if
the
one fucks
Sabbat
up, they all
Inquisition,
die.
how many times, Robert? How many times have they been wiped out? Twice now, like literally wiped completely off the face of the planet.
What are you talking about?
The Sabbat Inquisition. They have been killed to a man. How many times? Twice now.
Yeah, it's been about twice. But hey, they also took out some of the Black Hand too. So I mean,
three times if you're following the BNS canon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, three times.
Right, you're right. And the Black Hand was almost wiped out, and then the Black Hand managed to wipe this.
And then
wiped out all the time.
They put Samak in charge, and then Daddy had to call everybody into his special secret organization, whatever. Blah blah. Yeah. But yeah, no. Like so my idea with the Inquisition. I mean, Kevin knows quite well my love of the sort of religion of the Sabbat, because last Chronicle I played in his game, and I played an Orthodox character. I played a character who very much believed in the idea of the religion of the Sabbat. And to me, I think the Inquisition, yeah, you're right. They do only sort of have that jurisdiction over infernalism and heresy and things like that. But as any sort of political faction is wont to do, they gain more power as time goes on. And I don't think that's something to be shied away from. I think it's something to embrace and discuss, because you do have these holy warriors, these judge inquisitors, knight inquisitors, whatever, arguing with the agents of the Black Hand, or arguing with members of the Loyalists or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to always be. This is, again, one of the things that I really like about the Sabbat, because it requires you to oftentimes sit down with people who you just straight up don't agree with. Whereas in the Camarilla or the Anarchs, they can just kick you out if you don't agree with them. In the Sabbat, it is enforced and endorsed, the idea that sit down with someone you don't agree with, talk, and if it comes to the point where you just can't agree, go to a circle, fight it out. Figure out who's right that way.
What's the phrase? If there isn't blood on the table after a Sabbat War Council, there wasn't anything discussed?
Worth discussing.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything worth discussing. I haven't heard that phrase, but I would say I kind of agree with it. Sure, maybe. It's a little bit like a red wedding that way, or a Dothraki wedding.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah. I can absolutely see that. I think there's but again, like I said, I think there's a lot of benefit to exploring that section of the Sabbat. So I think it does a disservice to, and again, not that I'm saying Matt is saying this or anybody's saying this, but I think it does a disservice to completely remove that concept of the Sabbat, because it removes a large portion of the game that you're able to play. And to me, it's a portion of the game that I really enjoy exploring, because one of my favorite things is, the idea of religion and how it affects people, and how it can make people do certain things, or how people can use it to justify acts of great goodness or acts of great evil. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had the Crusades, for God's sake.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Yeah, I mean, like you had all these different things that shows religion can be a force of great good or great evil. And I think if you remove that, or you try and say that's not a big part of who the Sabbat are, it removes a major portion of the game for me.
I just to clarify, I don't think they should be removed at all. I think that there's a tendency to make them as powerful as they were in like the medieval church, where they were pretty much untouchable.
Pretty much.
When in the Sabbat, you can have a more interesting story about the conflict between the need for unity and direction versus freedom and individual, an individual drive and social Darwinism and all this other stuff that Sabbat include. You can have a more interesting story if the Inquisition is not that knows it's on a knife's edge, but does believe it's doing the right thing, and that they are a defeatable foe. If you decide to stand up to the Sabbat Inquisition, they are far less powerful than, say, the Catholic Inquisition was, and they do not command immediate absolute deference and respect within the sect, pretty explicitly. Not even the cardinals and the Prisci and all that command the absolute respect of the Sabbat. You can right up to the regent. Or you can go to a messenger of the regent. You can flip him the bird as a ductus and say, "Go screw yourself where the sun don't shine," and walk away and still be a Sabbat. And it's said that many ductuses will make a point of doing so, and then only after some guy leans on their shoulder and whispers in their ear do they do something mostly what they're asked to do. So the Sabbat honoring their freedom is both their greatest strength, because the Camarilla and all their foes can't pin them down because you cannot predict them. There's so many aspects of them. If you want to get rid of the Sabbat, you better kill every last one of them, because just one Sabbat becomes 5 Sabbat within the week.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on. I mean, there's so much going on in the Sabbat as like a cool organization, but I think that the common thread between everything me and Kevin and Robert are saying is you have to put yourself in a very different mindset than in the Camarilla, and that they have this dynamism and they have this conflict and they have these deep questions about what is it like to, because the ultimate question of the Sabbat is that, and the ultimate tragedy of the Sabbat is that they're a group of people trying to figure out how to deal with what they actually are. And they figured out kind of how to do that, and it's not pretty. And rather than look away from what they are, they've actually made the more courageous choice in the Camarilla, and they've said, no, we're going to look this thing in the eye and we're going to make it part of who we are, which is it's a great kind of anti-hero moment for them. But at the same time, they are still struggling as a group to figure out how they deal with that revelation and how you operate within it, and how to deal with the fact that shedding their humanity makes them, vulnerable to infernalists. It makes them vulnerable to chaos. It makes them vulnerable to all these sorts of things. So everything about the Raitai and stuff is focused on how do you keep control of something when you've taken the brakes off? Mm-hmm. Because the moment they got rid of humanity, the moment that they decided that they're no longer going to pretend and they're going to embrace their nature, they took the brakes off that train. So how do you keep control over it? And that is the constant question in the Sabbat Chronicle.
Oh, by the way, just as a sidetrack here, New Wave asked earlier on about the Tremere. If you accept that the lead up to Gehenna is true, there are no anti-tribute Tremere left. But I'm not sure about the other groups, how they play that.
Personally, I don't think that there are any Tremere in the Sabbat. There's House Goratrix, however.
They were the ones who got wiped out. They were technically anti-tribute Tremere.
Also, I believe V20 brought in the, what do they call them? The Tevlek Tremere.
The Talia
Valak, sorry. Yeah, which, interesting.
One of the big differences between Sabbat as it's played, because everybody wants to have at least one wizard, and the Sabbat as written, is that the Tremere have always been written as being rare cookies. They are very well protected while being completely distrusted. So it's not like you're going to just meet one in some temple somewhere. They are not allowed to stray far from where the cardinals and
depending on their job.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh.
I've always used the expression that they're kind of like the Nazi scientists that got picked up by the Soviet Union after the war. Nobody liked them, but they served a useful purpose.
Oh, hold on. You made Volkswagen? Come over here. We're just gonna grab you real quick, and no one's gonna talk about it. We're just gonna put you in a nice, quiet house. That's how it's gonna go.
Yes, and you're not allowed to leave it, and you're going to have a shackle down here. And if we do see you going outside of allotted hours, well, there's going to be some stupendously unnice things which happen to you.
Right.
And
but on the plus side, you get all the toys that you
free
want.
gargoyle that we've decided is going to be your special friend.
Yes.
We want to make sure you're safe.
And oh look, there's an occult library there with a big list of a big to-do
long
list.
scroll, dude. You're going to take you a while to get through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get started.
To kind of get back to that question of Tremere and the Sabbat, like Kevin said, you got the Polyobs, and you have the, you do have, to me, one of my favorite things is,
You got muted again, Robert.
yeah, I noticed that. To the Tremere, the Sabbat should be this question, this terrible answer to the question: what happens when everyone has access to blood magic? That's exactly like the Sabbat have the Rite. Anybody can perform the Rite. Anybody can. You can learn it just from anybody else in the sect.
And they perform it through faith, which is weird.
Yeah, and so I think that should absolutely be a terrifying concept to the Tremere of this is why we don't teach our magic to other people, because look what they've done.
Yeah,
with it.
seriously. It's like you people lost your damn mind.
Yeah.
You just told everybody.
I think the loss of the Tremere serves a really good narrative purpose. And going back to what Matt was talking about, the train with no brakes, with the Salubri Anti-Tribute coming into the story, they are a pretty, a great example, in my opinion, of that train with no brakes. Because here you have, the Salubri, who were the least awful of all vampires. Mm-hmm. And what happens when they take their brakes off? Well, you get these fanatic, fiery sword-wielding angels of death and destruction who are here to show you what it means to have no brakes. And I really like the Salubri Anti-Tribute as a concept.
Yeah, somebody commented about it. About the Salubri. The night is dark and full of terrors.
Well, yeah, I mean the Salubri and the Harbingers of the Skulls. It's just like what happens when the Cappadocians. They're totally. We're not Cappadocians. Bullshit. What happens when the Cappadocians decide it's go time? Yeah. Crazy shit happens.
I feel like the Sabbat is just one of my favorite things about it is that so many of the clans within the Sabbat are really just the vengeance of the Camarilla come back to bite them. It's the La Sombra against the Ventru, it's the Salubri versus the Tremere, it's the Cappadocians versus the Camarilla's allies, the Giovanni. And so it's basically just this giant question of what happens when you don't kill everybody you were supposed to kill.
And on top of that, a lot of the Sabbat anti-tribu, some of them, one of the things I love about the two clans I listed, Ventru and Toreador, the Ventru anti-tribu are actually noble. They are leaders. They keep their word. They're actually really good to be in charge. People seek them as ductuses because they are really good leaders in a way that the Camarilla are not. And in a more terrible way, it's frequently mentioned that the Toreador anti-tribu are more Toreador than the Toreador are, and they know it. And that they basically they are appalled and attracted to them because they are this ideal that they can never achieve because they've the unshackled artist who completely revels in their nature. So you have this counterpoint within the Sabbat to everything. And if even if you're running a Camarilla game, an Anarch game, the Sabbat give you this opportunity to confront people with what they're actually supposed to be. And also confront them, as Robert said, with their sins. So that, this is the the big thing about the Sabbat is like knock reality has just showed up.
Because the Sabbat can and will weaponize your loose ends. I mean, that's part and parcel of how they work.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I mean a big part of the Sabbat is, like Kevin said, that turning people, because one of my favorite things to do in the Sabbat is because again I love philosophy, so I love to make people think about the question of, specifically, a lot of people feel the Camarilla is right. So the question of, why do you think you're right? What makes you think you're better than a member of the Sabbat? Why do you, we are all morally gray at best.
Because we are the Citadel and you are the barbarians at the gates.
Yeah, that's a fair point that a lot of people think about, but it's not necessarily true at all.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah. It's just what we tell the we tell the fledglings so that they'll keep working.
Right, and the difference there being that the Sabbat are saying, look, let your younglings choose. Let them find for themselves what they think truth is, what they think freedom is. Don't put them under your thumb because I say so. Do it because you earn it. Do it because you've chosen to follow this person. Do it because it's a lot of meritocracy. Matt brought up this idea of the Sabbat being anti-heroes, and to me, that's one of my favorite concepts to play them out as is the anti-heroes. I love anti-heroes. So I it's a lot of questions of making people ask questions that they don't ask in a Camarilla venue because it's heretical to ask that question, or it's impossible to do that. Whereas the Sabbat, they do have their own sort of ups and downs and things that they keep hidden or whatever. But on the surface, they're very much open and saying, look, go find out for yourself what the truth is. I'll help you. And if we come to a disagreement, we'll argue it out. And if we get to a point where we can't argue anymore, we'll fight it out. And I think that's a really great benefit of the Sabbat.
And another great theme to go on with the Sabbat, which is on top of that, is that they're the ones who can look at a vampire who's of another sect and say, the only reason you hate me is I am what you would be if you were brave enough. And
that is true.
There's a lot of that going on where the soul, especially of a lot of the anti-tribu, are. As far as the thing coming around to bite them, my joke to Robert is that, the chicken that is coming to roost for the La Sombra clan via the Sabbat.
What's that?
Dealing with the Sabbat.
Yeah.
Talk about being the architects of your own problem.
Hey, you know what? The good news is the La Sombra believe in crucibles.
Yeah. All right, we got a new question from Zonalo. So what about the scenario where blood magic and necromancy, etc., become common knowledge?
Whoa.
I
that
don't
becomes...
even want to think about that.
That becomes a big problem really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially necromancy.
You can't swing a stick without finding an NPC that is statted up and has 2 or 3 passive thumb. So the real question is that not the real scenario already?
Because most storytellers have sense.
Just keep it out of the PC's hands, but let every NPC in canon character have it. Right?
Oh, that's even worse. I love it.
Alternatively.
Yeah,
the thing is, in the canon, there's no way it could be common knowledge. I mean, if you look at rituals,
but if
it's
you're
a freaking
$5
background you have
guys
to buy.
a week.
But the thing about learning thaumaturgy is that not everyone can learn it. Well, all right, let me put it another way. Thaumaturgy is one of the disciplines that requires a lot of specialized knowledge.
Yes.
It's not, occult, etc. And also, it's not really a cut and dry discipline the same way that something like potence and fortitude and
much of an
celerity and all the other really common physical disciplines are, and even like the common mental disciplines. It's not the same because with all the disciplines, you have only one use for one power. The first use of dominate command is just one word. It's just a one-word command.
Go.
Also, thaumaturgy,
Whatever.
go, stop, sleep, shout, etc. As the disciplines progress, they get a little bit more complicated. But with thaumaturgy, it's something completely different.
It's also not natural for the blood.
Exactly.
It's something that you have to learn how to do, and also, I mean, even the Sabbat swinging around. Well, the Tremere, like, they justify it by saying they don't embrace people that can't do Thom, right? That's part of what they choose.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
The big thing about, even if you look at the Sabbat rituals, which ostensibly anyone can learn, is that it is a massive background to buy. The rituals background, I think you have to have it at least level 3 or 4 to know all the Arcturus Raitai. And then that's not even getting into the Ignobilis Raitai. And that means, congratulations. What was that?
Depending on what system.
Yeah. But, like, it's a major background to buy. And you have to have faith in the rituals. And they literally say you cannot just do the Valdery in a 7-Up cup or 7-Eleven cup. That is not going to work. And you have to know what you're doing, or else it fucks up. You have to make the rolls, and you have to do it right, especially with like the high stuff, and it is high risk every single time you do it. Not only can it backfire on you, you can have a social backfire on it if it fails.
Yeah, I don't imagine.
Oh yeah, your pact will get all pissy about it if it.
Yeah, and I don't.
I have seen civil wars happen in dioceses over failed rituals.
Yeah,
because that's when the finger pointing comes out.
Yeah, and then you get people pointing at you, accusing you of heresy, and that's never fun. No.
And they claim that infernalists intentionally screw up the Raitai and so on and so forth.
And then
Going back to Peter's point about necromancy, how that one, necromancy and to an extent thaumaturgy both have really strong gatekeepers. I mean, for necromancy, you've got the Cappadocians and its bloodlines, and that's it. And they have no desire or interest or profit to teach you necro when they can do it for you.
True.
Kevin,
Nagaraja.
Are you telling me the Semeti are really that great at gatekeeping anything?
I was getting ready to go there. I'm just saying.
Look, do you want to touch a gate that's got slimy flesh on it?
Yeah, maybe.
No, they're just rare enough that they count as a gatekeeper. I gotta find one.
But
that's funny because like every single city I've ever been in, and a LARP has had one. NPC or PC is the only question.
My city had one. He just died very recently, so yeah.
Especially if the Wraith wants to be heard, just say it.
Yeah.
If the Wraith wants to be heard talking to you could do that without it. Just
if I see one more Midwest white boy, prepping up a like Cajun accent to play a Semeti. Oh my god! Thank you so much for not doing that, Kevin. By the way, I'm not dealing with like the worst Louisiana accent, like somebody just adding me to every single sentence. Oh my god!
He wouldn't have done that. He would have just gotten Kyle to NBC at the end of that.
Ooh, ow!
I was from Louisiana.
That can't be any worse than
Semeti. I feel vaguely objectified. No, shut up.
It can't be any worse than the accents that the Gentleman Gamer did whenever he got to play Tremere Anti-Tribu.
Oh.
He always did South African accent. I literally cannot but think of House Goratrix or Tremere Anti-Tribu without picturing the South African accent.
An Afrikaans accent, huh?
Yes. And it's pretty strange because a lot of the people that I do work with are from South Africa, so I get to hear their accent quite a bit.
South African is this weird mix of Dutch, Danish, and Australian.
Mm-hmm. And a bit of Flemish in there as well.
Yeah.
In fact, the Flemish language is probably... In fact, Afrikaans is probably... to me, it sounds like a mix between Dutch and Flemish. At least only to listen to. When you actually have people actually speak it and then you compare it to Dutch, you can kind of see the similarities, but it's just... It's like the difference between well, Jacob will probably know this. It's like the difference between Parisian French and Quebecois French.
Yeah.
But now Matthew Dawkins is a fantastic guy.
Yeah, I love the guy,
and he's a great role player, and he's a fantastic writer. So I'll let him not have the greatest. If you say he doesn't have the greatest accent in the world,
no, it was a good accent.
Yeah.
It was just I think it was probably more the face paint that he's wearing for when he's doing it, as well as like the.
But he didn't bring a makeup artist with him?
No, he did his own makeup. He basically did kind of like the people that I was told. Some of the people that told me about this. I mean, I was actually there in some of these scenes, and I can say that it wasn't as bad as he put it on, but. People used to say that he did blackface for this one, when the truth is it wasn't. It was just kind of like a big slapdash thing, you know. In fact, one of them he actually put on kind of like a checkerboard type sequence, and in another scene he did kind of like a Victorian like makeup with like the whole dot on the side of the cheek.
Oh yes, the beauty mark.
Yes.
Okay, we've got another question from Zonlo. What about Anarch, La Sombra, and Sumiche?
Dead. All dead.
There are no Anarch.
Yeah.
First of all, there are no Anarch Zamisi for sure.
There is no such thing as a Zamisi tribute. Say it with me again. There is no such thing as a Zamisi anti-tribute.
They are described as being so inhuman. They go anti-tribu, quote unquote, or go independent because they are literally so inhuman. The other Zamisi go, you can go over there and we'll leave you alone.
I just don't want to hang out with you anymore. You're just too creepy.
You're weirding us out. Sit down.
And can I just say, if anyone ever comes to a game that I'm running and they want to play an Anarch Shemisi or La Sombra, I'm gonna have to
politely decline.
I'm not gonna just say politely decline. I'm gonna have to call someone up and to get a helicopter so I can push them out.
Anarch La Sombra could happen. A Anarch saying they're La Sombra is a dead man.
Yes.
So in the BNS plotline, there was actually this big exodus where a bunch of La Sombra neonates left the Sabbat and joined the Anarch movement, and it was like a big part of their meta plot. And so
this is also called fan service to let more people play La Sombra.
I just have so many thoughts.
It sounds more like a formula for a free helicopter ride.
Robert, bring it home, buddy. Bring it home, buddy.
Anarch La Sombra are called recruiters, aren't they?
Let's be honest here for a second. The La Sombra are very much like they are the leaders. They believe themselves to be the military leaders of the Sabbat. So if you have someone running away from the military, that person has gone AWOL. They are no longer part of the group, which means if you see them, for
KOS, man.
For the La Sombra, it is okay. You have most of the time they are written as giving them one option to come home, and if they don't come home, you're dead after that. You have one chance to come home, and if you don't take that chance, you're dead. Period. End of story.
The Sabbat are written as stopping at nothing to kill La Sombra anti-tribe once he's been identified. Correct?
Yes,
correct.
That is true.
Yeah. Once a La Sombra of the Sabbat finds out somebody has obtenebration, they are going to hunt that person down mercilessly.
Well, they're going to find out who taught it to him and then kill him. But that's...
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be just hell on earth will it come to find whoever taught that person obtenebration. And then they will do whatever is necessary to take out that person and every person connected to them
that they've ever talked to.
Until there is a complete understanding that there are no La Sombra outside of the Sabbat.
I included a La Sombra anti in 2 campaigns. One of them never let anyone know what they were, and the other one was literally the city's scourge, who was doing that in order to be protected. And no one, and the reason he was the Scourge is because the only people who ever saw him were about to die. And the only thing that was ever seen of him outside of that was that occasionally the Ventru Prince's shadow was a little bit darker than maybe it should be. That's the only reason he did. Every single Lasombra Ante should be the most paranoid person on the planet and should be begging for protection and should be making deals left and right and hoping that they work out for them, because the Lasombra will stop at nothing to find their wayward children. And even if they believe your conversion, they're going to send you to the abyss for about 500 years to think about what you did.
Yeah. So to kind of also, because there is a purpose in playing, I feel, Lasombra Anarchs, and that is to play, to play this outsider type of story. And again, like I said, that to me, as from a canon game perspective, yes, absolutely, the Lasombra hunt down their wayward children. From a LARP perspective, in which you have to play this game with other people, I often like to introduce it as, okay, you have this one shot to come home, and you need to make this decision. If you make the wrong decision, then that's it. You've ended up with your final decision, and that is death for you.
As far as the lore is concerned, there's only one person who's not had that happen to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was because everybody he would have sent after her would have killed him. She would have killed him anyway. So. Yeah,
that person had plot armor. I'm guessing.
Yeah, kind of.
Plot armor and Mary Sue complex.
Lucina is a flaw. I think it's unfair to call her Mary Sue. I think that she's a deeply flawed individual, but she is a fan favorite, and thus would never die in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Okay.
I think. Let's not talk about the special characters.
We can talk about the person who was a werewolf and a mage.
Okay, we have 9 minutes left, so keep that in mind.
So another cool thing about playing the Lasombra Antes is that you're dealing with a group of people. I don't believe in Anarch Lasombra Antes. I think Lasombra Antes should mostly be the most like elders. They're mostly like 7th, 6th, 8th gen, because they're the ones that were around before the destruction of the Antediluvian, who didn't swear to the Sabbat and have been running ever since. And I like them because you have these people which once had a somewhat dark history, but they still had nobility to them, and now they are being burdened with the sins and the savagery of others, and they don't necessarily agree with what the Lasombra main clan has done, and they still possess some of that nobility, and they do not follow the path of night in the same way, because that didn't even exist by then. That was a construction of the Sabbat Lasombra. So there is this cool idea of these people who, this kind of like fall from grace sort of thing going on. It's not quite a small grace because the Lasombra weren't that like angelic, but they are this misunderstood people who have had their own people turn against them, and that's a cool story too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You brought up the Path of Night. I mean, that's one of my favorite. Again, like me and Jake said, it's one of my favorite paths because to me, one of the really cool things about Path of Night is the concept of you are a monster. You are the monster under the bed. But a lot of people use that as an excuse to just, again, play this crazy monster, do these random, murder killings or whatever, and that's the only way that they play it. When, in my opinion, one of my favorite ways to play Path of Night is the idea of you are the monster in the darkness because there has to be one. There has to be a monster in order for the rest of the world to improve, to benefit, to get better. And so I think having Lasombra Anarchs or even Lasombra Cam, who pursue that path and sort of add that flavor into a different sect, can be a really interesting story. I don't think it. I think more often than not, it's not done super well. And again, I'm not saying in any way that I know how to do it correctly either, but I like the concept of it and the idea of it. So I think that it's a really cool story to explore and play with.
I think that during the 90s edgelord phase of Vampire's development, I think that there was a lot of really great attempts. One of the cool things about Justin Achilles' Guide to the Sabbat was the attempts to recenter the paths. Yeah, he's a cool guy. I met him in Berlin and at Grand Masquerade, I believe. They tried to recenter the paths on being an actual like philosophy. And they did that in every version, but they really tried to hammer it home that these people, there's no path of murder babies for breakfast. That's not a path. These are people trying to control their beast while remaining what they are. Yes, the Sabbat are scary because literally they have paths that say a sin is not killing when it's the most expedient solution. They have a path that says that. But in reality, if you have an ST that isn't doing what some people call vampians, which is the running around and trying to be as awesome as possible, there are some real problems with that sin dictate. I mean, it just says most expedient. It doesn't say smartest. And to dedicate yourself to being a monster still takes dedication and means that you can be beset by a quandary just as much, if not as easily, as anyone else.
It's one of my favorite things to just kind of add on to this. It's one of my favorite things to have these creatures, which, again, as was discussed earlier, are of alien mindsets. It's more often than not the thing I love to talk about when people are like, well, the Sabbat are monsters because of how they treat humans. How often does anyone here on a day-to-day basis think about an individual cow? Just a single individual cow. How often do you question how a cow is feeling or doing or whatever? Like, to me, that's how I often think about being on a path. It's that I don't care about these other things. I'm far more dedicated to my own personal tasks. I'm far more dedicated. I have found, a path is, I have found something that gives me such purpose in life that I'm willing to push everything aside in order to see this goal or this idea through. And that's, to me, what the sort of the greatest benefits of playing a path is, because it's not just an excuse to be a rampaging monster. It's an excuse to be a philosopher. It's an excuse to be a thinker. It's an excuse to, one of my favorite scenes that I've had this chronicle happened in Tampa with a friend of mine, where my character, who is, this elder shadow monster, La Sombra, was talking to this elder Giovanni, and we were talking about the people around us being incapable of understanding dedication, of not knowing what true purpose is in life, because we were both on paths. He was on Death and the Soul, and I was on Night, and the people around us are all on humanity. And we are just sitting there thinking, just talking to each other, saying, these children don't understand.
Have no clue.
That is nicely put.
Yeah.
Okay, we are running at 2 minutes. Matthew, want to get your plug in one more time before we go?
Sure. The night in question will be running on November 17th. It is the first official immersive style Sabbat White Wolf LARP. We can find out more information at jackalope-larp.com. We're also on Twitter at jackalope-larp, and you can also find us on Facebook under Jackalope Live Action Studios. And we'd appreciate everybody taking a look at that. And if you know anyone who truly loves the Sabbat, it's going to be a really amazing experience. You're going to, go through the actual original creation rites. You're going to see a blood temple. You're going to see some crazy stuff, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Running around in a field being scared to death in vampires in November.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I want to thank you for joining us in the channel live tonight, guys. Appreciate y'all being here, as you, some
Thank
of
you
you
for having
are
us.
on a week.
Super
Oh,
great
thank
to
you.
be here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys so much for inviting us.
and I was talking to the folks in the chat channel, but I'm getting to y'all. Hang on. And of course, I want to thank our guest tonight, Jason Barber, who is also a returning guest, and Matthew, Robert, and Kevin. Thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate you being on. This has been. I've learned more about this about one night. That's worked for me. I one of the reasons I do this show is so I can learn new shit.
So this is the part where we shut off the chat and then we just keep talking, right?
That's usually what happens.
All right,
the show
Robert.
is...
Now I get to tell you what I really think.
So,
wait,
all right,
you're-
guys. Everybody say goodnight in the channel. Everybody say goodnight in the chat. And we'll see.
Night, Zamisi aunties aren't real.
Night, guys. Don't let the sombra get you in the darkness.
Good night, my friends. Have fun playing whatever you play.
Everyone have fun.
In nomine Cain, et gladius, et sanguis sancti.
Jake.
Good night, everyone.